Every single one of us used to live in trees, not metaphorically, literally. For tens of millions of years, the ancestors of humans slept, ate, mated, and raised their young high above the forest floor. If you have ever wondered why your hands look the way they do, or why your shoulders can spin like a pitcher's, the answer starts up in the canopy. Today we're asking a simple question. Did humans evolve from tree dwellers? Stick around because the answer explains half the weird stuff your body still does without you even noticing. Rewind the clock about 55 million years to a period called the Eocene. Forests stretched across huge parts of the planet, thick, tangled, and full of danger. Somewhere up in those branches lived small, quick, wide-eyed primates. They weren't chimps. They weren't monkeys either. They were something closer to a cross between a squirrel and a lemur, built for exactly one job, not falling. Here's the part that tends to surprise people. For roughly 45 million years, nearly every ancestor in our lineage lived primarily in trees. Compare that to the mere 2 million years or so that our genus Homo has spent mostly on the ground. In evolutionary terms, we are ground dwellers by technicality only. Arboreal life isn't a footnote in human history. It is most of the book, and the ground-dwelling chapter is really just the epilogue. And this story actually starts even earlier than those Eocene primates. Go back further, past 65 million years, right around the time the dinosaurs disappeared, and you find tiny shrew-like mammals scurrying around the base of trees. Some scientists believe these early creatures were already testing out life just above the ground before true primates ever existed. Once the dinosaurs were gone and forests exploded across the planet, those small mammals suddenly had an entire vertical world open up to them, with almost nothing chasing them up there yet. That empty, dangerous, resource-rich space above the forest floor is really where this whole story begins. So why live in trees in the first place? Two words explain almost everything: predators and food. Trees are basically nature's apartment complex with a doorman. Big cats, ancient hyena relatives, giant flightless predatory birds, none of them were great climbers. If you were a small, defenseless mammal in the Eocene, height meant survival. On top of that, trees were loaded with food. Fruit, leaves, insects, bird eggs, all sitting there for the taking. If you could grip a branch and balance 30 feet up, you had a private buffet with zero competition from ground-level hunters. That single advantage shaped nearly everything that came after, from our eyesight to our fingers. Notice the word grip, because that is doing a lot of work. Most mammals have claws. Claws are great for digging and slashing, but they are terrible for delicately gripping a thin branch while reaching for fruit with your other hand. So somewhere along the way, our tree-dwelling ancestors traded claws for flat nails and sensitive fingertip pads. That trade might sound minor, but it is the exact same anatomy you are using right now to hold your phone or scroll this video. Meanwhile, their eyes were shifting too, gradually rotating to face forward and developing sharper color vision, mainly so they could judge distances between branches accurately and spot ripe red fruit hiding in a sea of green leaves. Miss a jump from 30 feet up, and evolution stops caring about your opinion on the matter. Now here's the second reason, and this is where the story gets genuinely interesting. Around 10 to 15 million years ago, the climate started shifting. Africa in particular got drier. Forests that used to stretch unbroken for miles began thinning out, breaking into patches with grassland spreading between them. Suddenly, the safe, connected canopy highway our ancestors depended on had gaps. Big ones. Some primates adapted by staying put in the shrinking forest patches. But others, the ones who would eventually become us, started spending more and more time crossing open ground between trees. That is not a small change. That, right there, is the opening chapter of walking on two legs. There is actually an ongoing debate among scientists about exactly how that transition happened, and it is worth mentioning because it shows this is real, active science, not a settled textbook fact with no loose ends. One idea suggests our ancestors first walked upright while still living mostly in the trees, using two legs to balance carefully along branches while holding onto vines or limbs overhead for support, and only later brought that upright posture down to the ground. Another idea points to knuckle walking. the way modern gorillas and chimps move as a possible in-between stage. Researchers are still comparing fossil hip bones, wrist joints, and footprints to figure out which path fits the evidence best. Either way, the destination was the same, a body increasingly comfortable away from the safety of branches. Think about how differently we live now compared to those ancestors. You are not scanning the sky for eagles or gripping a branch while eating breakfast. Modern life is almost entirely about the ground, floors, chairs, sidewalks, elevators. But your body never got that memo. Your shoulders can rotate nearly all the way around, which is fantastic for throwing a baseball and completely pointless for anything except swinging and reaching through branches. Your hands have opposable thumbs built for gripping bark and fruit, not for scrolling a phone, though they do that job fine too. Even your eyes sit facing forward instead of pointing sideways like a deer's, giving you the depth perception you needed so you didn't misjudge a branch and fall to your death. None of that design makes sense for an animal built to walk on flat ground. All of it makes perfect sense for an animal built to live in trees. Even something as ordinary as a baby's grip fits this pattern. Newborn human babies have a surprisingly strong reflex where their fingers automatically curl tight around anything pressed into their palm. Doctors call it the palmar grasp reflex, and on its own it seemed almost pointless for a baby who's going to spend the next year lying on a blanket. But it makes far more sense as a leftover instinct from a time when infant primates needed to cling tightly to their mother's fur while she climbed through the canopy, since dropping a baby 30 feet was not exactly an option. Here's where I need to correct something almost everyone gets wrong. Humans did not evolve from monkeys, and we definitely did not evolve from chimpanzees. That is the version people picked up from a bad diagram somewhere, and it simply is not true. Humans and chimpanzees share a common ancestor that lived somewhere between 6 and 8 million years ago. That ancestor was not a monkey, and it was not a chimp either. It was its own distinct species, and both modern humans and modern chimps evolved separately from it, heading in different directions. Chimps did not stop evolving to sit around and wait for us to catch up. They kept evolving too, just toward a more specialized life of climbing and knuckle walking, while our branch of the family kept experimenting with standing upright on the ground. There is a second myth worth clearing up while we're at it. Plenty of people picture our early tree-dwelling ancestors swinging arm over arm through the canopy the way gibbons do today. That specific swinging motion is called brachiation, and it is actually a later, more specialized skill that shows up in only certain primate branches. Most of our early tree-dwelling ancestors were not swinging dramatically from branch to branch at all. They were doing something far less cinematic, careful, four-limbed climbing and walking along the tops of branches, more like a cautious tightrope walker than an acrobat. The dramatic swinging move came later, and it belongs to a completely different twig on the primate family tree, one we are not actually descended from. It is worth pausing on just how much evidence backs this up, because it is not guesswork. Fossil hand and shoulder bones from species like Ardipithecus show a mix of ground walking and tree climbing features existing in the very same skeleton. Wrist bones with the flexibility for grasping branches, hip bones angled for upright walking, both showing up together. That mixture is the fossil record actually catching our ancestors mid-transition, one foot still in the canopy and one foot testing out the ground. It is rare to catch evolution this clearly in the act, and honestly, that is what makes this particular chapter of our history so satisfying to dig into. Every new skeleton dug out of the ground adds another data point to that timeline, and researchers are still finding them, which means this story is not finished being written. So let's bring this all together. For tens of millions of years, our ancestors lived in trees because trees meant safety, and trees meant food. Then the climate changed. Forests thinned, and crossing open ground between patches of trees became a regular necessity, which nudged our ancestors toward walking upright. Every strange little feature of the human body, the flexible shoulders, the grasping hands, the forward-facing eyes, is essentially leftover hardware from millions of years spent above the forest floor. We did not evolve from a monkey hanging on a classroom chart. We evolved through a long, slow negotiation between the trees and the open ground, and the trees left their fingerprints all over us, from your fingertips to your eyeballs. So here's my question for you. If you had been born 50 million years ago, Do you think you would have made it as a tree dweller, or would gravity have gotten the better of you pretty quickly? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the strange, surprising story of how humans became human, hit subscribe, because next time we're tackling an even stranger chapter of our evolutionary past.